it was just beautifully sequenced. You know, it had highs and lows, and you travelled that journey with them over 4 sides, and I think that was what was so good about it. You know, there was a journey to be had with that album, and by the end of it, you were breathless. You know, you'd been part of their world, and it doesn't work like that anymore with CD. I think the fact that it was 4 vinyls with 4 very different contexts going on you know, each side made it such a journey. It had every colour of the Zeppelin spectrum, you know, which is what they wanted to achieve with it. I think there was always plans to use it. I mean, in Zeppelin, when they got to an end of album, it got to a point where they thought, oh, we haven't used that, but maybe we should do. And Physical Graffiti was the right time to go back and look at those tracks that hadn't quite made it before. It wasn't a case of the tracks weren't up to scratch. I think it was just the fact that the quality of other tracks, you know, had taken precedence. So I think something like Bon Noir fits into that scope, and it was good to see it eventually used. It's interesting that as they were recording the album, mixing the album, certainly Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young played a massive gig at Wembley Stadium in the September of '74, and all 4 members of Zeppelin went to that show. There was a jam afterwards, actually, with Plant, Page and Neil Young and Steve Stills, and I think there may have been an element then that they wanted to include that track, you know, as a tribute to the, you know, the sort of association they had with, you know, those artists. So it was a nice one to do, and it just, you know, was a good throwback, you know, to the after the Gold Rush sort of Harvest, Neil Young era, which Plant was very fond of. So it worked well. It was just another semi-acoustic stomp, which I think fitted itself really nicely into the more eclectic feel of side 4. It's just Led Zeppelin almost having a day off. You know, it's not, you know, it's nothing too intensive, and it sets you up for what is quite a relaxed next few minutes. So again, it's a good template of what's coming. But Led Zeppelin, as I say, in their most summery of moods, which is always good. Led Zeppelin collectively were very good at borrowing lots of influences, not always without credit. But the fact is, you know, it was about music. It's only really where it's gone on, if you look at the modern age, you know, plenty of bands take their riffs without, you know, being credited. It's gone full circle, but, you know, for Zeppelin at that era, they were looking back to the 50s and, you know, the 40s with the blues artists, whereas now, you know, bands, you know, the modern era are looking back to Zeppelin. So it's gone full circle, but credit or not, it always came out sounding uniquely Zeppelin. What you've got here is Led Zeppelin as a funk band, you know, and that's, you know, who could have dreamt that in 1969? What is evident is the influences that each of them were able to take. And there's no doubt about the fact that on the tour in '73, Stevie Wonder's music was all over the radio. You know, his Talking Book album was a huge success. And I think certainly John Paul Jones and certainly John Bonham had tuned in on that. And I think Trampled is their tribute to Stevie. There were many plans to release singles, not by them normally by the record company. What happened with Trampled was they'd got to a point with Elscourt where they'd sold out the nights, and the record company was very keen to have a single out. Again, Peter Grant, no way he was going to go for that, but he did relent and allow them to produce a promo single, which did get some airplay, but you could only get it as part of a record shop pack. The record shop had to order so many albums, and then they got 5 free singles. So it was an underground single, if you like. It seeped out in typical Zeppelin style, you know, a bit mystique there. Have you got the Zeppelin single? No. How do you get it? Well, you don't. You know, it's one of those, isn't it? And that was so, again, typically Zeppelin. It was going in the direction that maybe Rain Song was, you know, had gone in, you know, previously, but taken even further. And one of the most emotional tracks, I think, that certainly Robert Plant sang on, there's emotion in his voice, which again mirrors the whole melancholy feel of that track. 10 years gone, holding on. You know, he was looking back, and I think the music, you know, and the composition that came in with it was totally in harmony with his lyrical theme, which made it such a, you know, fantastic track, and very romantic is the word I'd use. It's just got that feel about it of, you know, lost love, which, you know, was all part of Led Zeppelin's world as much as it was anybody else's. What's interesting about Kashmir more than anything is that John Bonham's driving, relentless timekeeping on that track makes the track, you know, and I think Jimmy plays off John Bonham on that. The temptation to fill that sound with different fills and whatever, you know, percussive-wise, must have been huge. The fact that he didn't gives that song its absolute vastness and clarity. Think Again is a fitting climax to the whole spectrum of sounds that you've heard in the previous, you know, 75 minutes. So a great way to end, and the ultimate groupie song. You know, there's never been a song better that sums up the whole craziness of, you know, the Hammer of the Gods lifestyle, which they were perpetrating. You know, they were the biggest when it came to that, and most of the stories seem to be true, and some of them you can hear in the lyrics of that song. A great ending. No doubt about it, Physical Graffiti is a high point, possibly the highest.